Love of the beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Love of the beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyid al-Mursaleen. Amma ba'd, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Rasulallah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Habiballah. As-salatu wassalamu alayka ya Nabi Allah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya Nur Allah. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is our ideal role model. He's our true role model. He's somebody that we need to love more than ourselves as well. And our iman is not complete until we love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than our own lives as well. And in this series of programs, our role model, inshallah, we're going to talk about the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in different aspects of his life so that we can understand what a true role model is. Because our youngsters today, they have this shaitanic whisper that how is it possible that somebody that was born over 1400 years ago can be a role model for us today? Viewers of Madani Channel, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not only a role model for us today, but he'll be a role model for everybody from now until the day of judgment. And in this series of programs, we're going to talk about different aspects about his life as a father, as a friend, as a leader. Insha'Allah, we'll see different aspects about his life. But before we begin, viewers of the channel, we're going to begin by giving you a blessing of reciting Durud Pak upon the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that on the day of judgment, there will be only three types of people that will get the shade on that day. Number one is he who removes a worry from a fellow ummati. Number two is he who revives the Sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And number three is he who spends his time in reciting Durud Pak upon the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Viewers of the channel, that in itself, hearing the blessings of reciting Durud Pak today, even today, and from now until the day of judgment, tells you the importance of the status of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That from 1400 years ago until the day of judgment, those people who recite Durud Pak upon the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of them will be rewarded. All of them will be rewarded. And there are so many blessings of reciting Durud Pak. And again, that in itself shows you the great status of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we need to understand that the time when the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came, it was a time of sheer ignorance. It was a time where people were so far away from the deen. A time where people used to bury the daughters alive. A time where there was no haya whatsoever. There was no rights for women. You know, women were treated like cattle and just sold or passed over from generations to family. And nowadays when we talk about, you know, the rights of women, or we talk about the rights of people, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave these rights over 1400 years ago to women. He gave the rights to children, and all these people had rights. But at the same time, as well as giving all of these rights to all of these people and showing us how our wives should be treated, showing us how our children should be treated, showing us how we should be as leaders in the community, how we should be friends with each other. At the same time, he also loved us. You know, it's part of our iman to love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved us as well. And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sacrificed so much for us in his life as well. And hopefully today, in today's program, we're going to talk a little bit about the love and the sacrifices that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made for us. And without doubt, he loved his ummah. It wasn't just a matter of him loving those people that are around him. You know, it wasn't a matter of him loving the companions. It wasn't a matter of loving his wives or loving his children. No, he loved the ummah. And in the ummah, he means all of the people who enter the fold of Islam until the day of judgment. He loved them all, and we are amongst those fortunate ones. You know, if there's nothing else that we've got in this dunya, if we've not performed any good deeds, then at least we can say that we are amongst the ummah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And when the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam raised his hands and did dua for the ummah, Allah, then we are amongst those fortunate people. And it makes you realize that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved us so much that he continued to do dua for us. He lived his life and sacrificed everything so much for us. At the same time, we need to give something in return. And I'm going to give you a few instances. It's narrated that during his return from a visit, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam cried. And the companion said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what makes you cry? He said, I miss my brothers. They said, are we not your brothers, O Messenger of Allah? He said, no, you are my companions. My brothers are those who will come after me, and they believe in me without seeing me. Allahu Akbar. We are amongst those fortunate people that we've not seen the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with our own eyes. We are blessed with this greatest gift that we can have, the greatest wealth that we can have, and that's our Iman. And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, he's crying that he misses us. How fortunate we are that we are in the du'as of the greatest of creation. But it makes you think, doesn't it? That the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loves us so much. Do we love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in any shape or form? We will never love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the way that he loves us. But at least we should try to love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We need to live our whole lives as a true lover, a person who follows the Sunnah, not because he's been told to do it, because it's the person that you are aspiring to be like. You want to be like the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You love him and you want to follow in his footsteps. And if you hear, you know, the companions of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they heard that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did something or said something or instructed something, they followed. They didn't ask why we're doing this, why we're doing that. No, a lover doesn't ask how, what, where, why, when. A lover follows. And that's where we need to learn to follow the Sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I'm going to use the word blindly. Yes, blindly follow. Because without a doubt, the true lovers blindly follow. They don't ask. And we need to think about that as well. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, listen to this. This is very, very important. This will give you an insight into how the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved us. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated it is in Sahih Muslim Sharif. Allah Azza wa Jalla has given one dua to every single prophet and every single messenger that he has guaranteed that he will respond to. And every single prophet has used up this dua for himself in this world, except for me. Listen to this. Except for me. He goes on to say, I have saved it and I have not used it and I will not use it in this life. I have kept it for my ummah. And I will use it for them on the day of judgment. And my dua will be, oh Allah, forgive my entire ummah. How fortunate are we that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is given a dua. He can ask for whatever he wishes. And he is told that whatever you ask for, you will be accepted. Whatever dua you want, whatever you want, you'll be accepted. But he's saving that dua for us. Us Muslims who can't even get out of bed at Fajr, he's saving that dua for us. Us Muslims who are afraid of following the Sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's saving it for us. Viewers of Madani Channel, think, reflect. How lucky we are. How lucky we are to be blessed amongst the ummah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are so lucky if only we realize. And that's why you hear it on Madani Channel so many times that the Muballighs of Dawah Islami will say to you that the greatest gift you have, the greatest wealth you have is your Iman. And part of that Iman is to love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In this hadith we are told that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that every prophet, every messenger has been given one dua that he will guarantee it will be accepted. And all the prophets, all the messengers did the dua in this dunya. On the day of judgment, I will make that dua. And the dua will be, oh Allah, forgive my entire ummah. This is the love that he made. Like I said, he could have asked for anything. He could have asked for anything. If I was to say to you now, you're sitting in your homes, and if I was to say to you, okay, whatever you wish, make a dua, whatever wish you want, it will be fulfilled. How many of us sincerely will make a wish that we will benefit from? We will, won't we? We'll make a dua that, Ya Allah, give me this. Ya Allah, forgive me. Ya Allah, enable me to have this. Ya Allah, me. Or we might even go a little bit further and say, me and my family. But the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not asking for himself. He's asking for his ummah. He's asking for you. He's asking for me. He's asking for the ummah right until the end of time. Allahu Akbar. The love that he had for the ummah is narrated that Sayyidina Aisha Siddiqa radiyallahu anha narrates that once when I saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a good mood, I said to him, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, supplicate to Allah Azza wa Jal for me. So he said, O Allah, forgive Aisha radiyallahu anha her past sins and her future sins, the sins which she has hidden and the sins which have been made apparent. Listen to this again. Ya Allah, forgive her past sins and her future sins, the sins which she has hidden and the sins which have been made apparent. And Sayyidina Hazrat Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha said, so I began smiling to the point that my head fell into the lap of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam out of joy and happiness. And without doubt, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, listen to this, viewers of the channel. Does my supplication make you happy? Sayyidina Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha said, I replied, and how can your supplication not make me happy? He then said, listen to this. He then said, by Allah Azza wa Jal, it is a supplication that I make for my ummah in every prayer. In every salah, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made this dua for us. May Allah forgive the past sins, the future sins, the hidden sins, the apparent sins. Forgive all of the sins. In every single salah, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam remembered us. Remembered us, sinful people, that Ya Allah forgive the past sins, Ya Allah forgive the future sins, Ya Allah forgive the apparent sins, Ya Allah forgive the hidden sins. These few hadiths that we mentioned. We need to reflect on these, think on these, and understand the status of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that all the sacrifices he made, and inshallah we're going to mention some of the sacrifices that he made. But he made them for us. And what are we doing? Nowadays, we're not even proud to be Muslims. We make all sorts of excuses rather than expressing our deen or showing our deen or acting upon our deen. We'll make all sorts of excuses. We're not proud of being Muslim. Whereas if there's only one thing that you have to be proud of in this dunya, is that you have been given the gift, the iman. You've been given that faith. You're being born. Majority of the people are born into the fold of Islam, and maybe that is why they don't realize how important it is. But those people, even today, that make sacrifices to come into the fold of Islam, they understand it. And we see those people that when they enter the fold of Islam, they become Muslims, they revert to the deen of Islam. Within 2 months, within 3 months, they've gone to perform the Hajj. They start paying the zakat straight away. And yet we see people that live their whole lives, Hajj is further upon them, they've never done it, they don't pay the zakat. I'm just going to leave you with one incident, viewers of the channel. There was a person, he'd newly come to Islam. He'd been a Muslim for maybe 6, 8, 9 months, something like that. I met him. He traditionally worked from home, so he wasn't interacting with a lot of people. But I met him one day, and he said to me, brother, I have a question. And the answer to the question should be no. So I was quite shocked that he's asking me the question and he's also giving me the answer. So what's the point in asking me the question? So I said to him, look, you're asking me the question, you're already telling me the answer, so what's the point in that? No, I just want to check. I want to make sure that that is the correct answer. I said, okay, fair enough. He said to me, brother, I have heard, I don't believe it to be true, I've heard that there are Muslims who don't pray. And when he answered that question, when he asked that question to me, then in the same way that I put my head down. What can I possibly say to him? What can I say to him that, yes, there are Muslims that don't pray, but me putting my head down and going quiet, he realized. And he said, I don't believe it. And it genuinely came into a state of shock for him. Then he said, how is it that a person can be a Muslim and not pray? What answer should I give him? To this day, I've not come up with an answer. And that is the question that we need to be asking ourselves. How can we be Muslims? How can we call ourselves Muslims? Were we not proud enough to get up and read our namaz 5 times a day? Not strong enough to act upon this? Viewers of Madani Channel, please think, please reflect. Now we've got a small package for you, inshallah, but after the package, come back and inshallah we'll continue with this discussion. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. After the death of Abu Lahab, some of his family members dreamed him in trouble. They asked, how was he treated after death? He replied, I did not receive any goodness after leaving you. Then indicating towards the hole at the underside of his thumb, he said, except this, as I am fed with water from this because I freed my slave girl Suwayba. Shaykh Allama Badruddin Aini rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi has stated that indication means that he is given some water. Commenting on the foregoing narration, Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Haq Muhaddis Dehelvi alayhi rahmatullahi al-Qawi has stated, in this incident there is credible evidence for those who celebrate the birth of the Holy Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam and spend their wealth on this occasion. Abu Lahab, who was a staunch unbeliever, was benefited due to rejoicing and freeing his slave girl Suwayba upon hearing the news of the blessed birth of the Holy Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Now imagine how great the reward will be for the Muslim spending his wealth wholeheartedly on this occasion. However, it is necessary to avoid songs and music in Milad gatherings. Dear viewers of Madani Channel, mark the blessed birth of the Holy Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam enthusiastically. Even a staunch unbeliever like Abu Lahab benefited due to expressing happiness over the birth of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. Then why not we, the Muslims, will be blessed? Abu Lahab rejoiced over the birth of a nephew, not that of the Prophet of Allah. Still, he was benefited. If we celebrate Milad out of love and admiration, how can we be deprived of reward? Ghar Amina ke Sayyid Abrar aa gaya, khushiyan manao ghamzado ghamkhar aa gaya. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa alihi wa sallam.
Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Viewers of Madani Channel, in that small package you learned, alhamdulillah, that the reward in celebrating the birth of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I would advise all of you that are watching, wherever you are, especially on the 12th of Rabiul Awwal, be happy, show your happiness, express your happiness. As they say, make your dastakhan, your food mat lengthy. Make it a special day. And especially for the youngsters, that one of the ways of instilling the love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in their hearts is by telling them about the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these events, these days that take place, celebrating it in such a way that they look forward to it. They're looking forward to this time of the year when lights go up in our houses, looking to this time of the year where they can go on the julus with their parents, looking to this time of the year where they can have mehfils at home, looking to this time of the year where, with them nice food on the 12th, and they celebrate it. And it needs to be a day of celebration especially for our youngsters, to instill the love inside them. The reward, alhamdulillah, we heard there is great reward in it. But if at the same time we can instill the love in our children, then that is part of our responsibility as parents to do that for our children and gradually instill the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam love in their hearts. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam once said, O Allah, unto you do I complain of my weakness, of my helplessness, and of my lowliness before men. O most merciful of the merciful, O Lord of the weak, and my Lord too. This was the beginning of the dua that the Prophet of Allah made after he had just been persecuted and hounded out of Taif. Prophet of Allah went to Taif to give dawah, to call people into the fold of Islam. And he left there covered in blood. The children had come out, the people of Taif, they sent the children out, and the children threw stones at the Prophet of Allah so much so that blood, the blessed blood of the Prophet of Allah ran down his blessed body, and his sandals, the blood made the sandals stick to his feet. That's how much blood there was. And he gave everything for his deen. And yet, even in this state, he still asked for forgiveness for those people. He asked that they be given guidance. He was given the opportunity. The angels came and said to him, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you tell us, then the mountains, we will crush these people because of the way that they have treated you. But the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no. Even in that state, the mercy and love that he had, when he had been persecuted so much, when he'd been injured so much, who in the world today, what leader in the world today would act like that? When they have been stones thrown at them, and they have been, Allah Azza wa Jalla has given them the power to get revenge, to get retribution, to get the mountains to crush these people. But the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did he do? He did dua for them. He did dua for them and prayed that Allah Azza wa Jalla give them guidance. Allahu Akbar. This was the worry of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He wasn't worried about the food of the ummah. He wasn't worried about the wealth of the ummah. He wasn't worried about the shelter of the ummah. He was worried about the guidance, the iman of the ummah. And that's what worried him. Such was his worry, viewers of Madani Channel, that he would cry. He said that his blessed beard, I don't know where our hearts have become so hard, viewers of Madani Channel. We find it hard to cry. Crying in the court of Allah, we find it so hard to cry. And our hearts have become so hard. But if we do, if you're amongst those fortunate people and we cry, how much do we cry? One tear comes down. That's it. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam cried for us, not just once, many, many times, cried for us such that his blessed beard became wet. Why? Because he was worried. He had this worry, he had this love for the ummah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Such was his worry that, as I said earlier on, he would make dua for the ummah at least 5 times a day. How many people make dua for me or for you at least 5 times a day? Our parents probably even don't do this. Our children probably don't even do this. But make dua for us 5 times a day. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made it for us, for you, for me, for all of the ummah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He gave sacrifice after sacrifice for the ummah. In tahajjud, his feet used to get swollen. He used to stand in tahajjud and his feet would get swollen. Again, doing dua for the ummah. He wouldn't eat for days. He wouldn't eat for days because there was no food there. He would tie rocks to his blessed stomach just to be able to stand straight. He used to wear patched clothes. He used to get sworn at. He used to get sand thrown at him. He used to get thorns thrown at him in the path. He would be stood in sujood. He would be in the sujood position in front of the Kaaba, and the kuffar, they would put the intestines of an animal on his back, only for his daughter to take them off. Imagine the intestines of an animal being thrown on you. And yet you are trying to guide these people. Imagine that you are in a position where you're trying to help someone, you're trying to guide someone, and this is how they treat you. That they throw the intestines on you, they throw thorns in your path, they throw rocks at you. They make blood come out of your body and run down your whole body. And yet still, even in that state, that pain, that suffering, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam still did dua for us. They offered him wealth. They offered the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam money. They offered him women. They offered him kingdom. They offered him anything. You have whatever you want. But give up this. But he refused. And he said, even if the sun was in one hand and the moon was in the other, he would not stop calling people towards Islam. Think of the sacrifices that he made for us. The love that he had for us. A beautiful example has been given. That a man, he was in love with someone. The woman said to him, that she will only marry him if he goes and cuts out the heart of his mother. A woman said to a man, I will only marry you if you go and cut the heart out of your mother. So he went home and he cut the heart out of his mother. And as he was coming out, he tripped, and his mother said to him, oh my son, take care, are you okay? Allahu Akbar. This is the love of the mother. But our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved us more than any mother could love us in the world. Allahu Akbar. Even, viewers of Madani Channel, on the day of Qiyamah, on the day of judgment, he will be worried about his ummah and he will intercede for us. For me and for you. The day every mother will run to a daughter for one good deed. Every father to a son, every brother to a sister, every husband to a wife will request, give me one deed. Even when people go to the prophets and ask them for intercession, they will be worried about themselves, not even the nation. They won't be worried about the nation. But it will be our Prophet. It will be our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who will be worried about his ummah. We are lucky to have a role model like the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he will be worried about us. Even on the day of judgment, he will be worried about us. But what have we done? What have we done to the Sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? We've neglected it. We're picking and choosing what comes into our life and what doesn't. How hard is it to keep this blessed beard on our face? How hard is it to cover our head? How hard is it to wear the clothing in such a way that it covers ourselves? How hard is this? It's not as if I'm asking you to carry 10 kilos on your back all the time. No. You know, to grow this blessed beard on your face, how hard is it? It's not as if the beard is so heavy and it's weighing me down and I'm walking like this. No, this beard it's there, isn't it? It's not causing me any inconvenience. I'm proud that I'm able to fulfill this sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what is happening is a lot of us, we're going away from this. We should effectively, the way that we are today, we should hold our heads in shame. Why can't we show? Why can't we be proud of the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why are we scared what someone will say to us? When the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that no man in this world can go through. Do we really love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam like we say we do? We all say it. You know, everybody that watches Madani Channel, I believe that all of the people that watch Madani Channel have that love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in their hearts. But we need to do so much more to show our love, to express our love, to act upon it, to be proud of it. We need to be proud of who we are. And not just say, I'm proud to be a Muslim. Prove it. Prove that you are proud to be a Muslim. Don't prove it to me. You don't have to prove anything to me. Prove it to yourself that you are proud that you are a Muslim. Grow a blessed beard. Follow the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're not even talking about the commands of Allah, that we need to read our namaz, we need to fast during the month of Ramadan, that we need to perform the hajj and the zakat. These are the commands that we must do. No question on that. No ifs, buts, no excuses. The sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the way that we will show our love. The rest is obligatory upon us. This is what will show our love. But we're too afraid to do it. Because what will somebody say? And then people say, oh, you know, if I grow a beard, I might not get married. The sisters will say, oh, if I start wearing an abaya, you know, rishteh won't come for me. If I wear the face covering, then I won't be able to get married. This is not true, brothers and sisters. This is not true. Whatever is in your destiny will come to you. And if you believe that whatever is in your destiny will come to you, why don't you go towards that destiny? By fulfilling the commands of Allah Azza wa Jalla. By loving the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he should be loved. By adopting the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our hearts. And if we do that, then insha'Allah Azza wa Jalla we'll reach our destiny. But we'll also reach it in a state where insha'Allah Azza wa Jalla, Allah Azza wa Jalla will be happy with us. And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will be happy with us as well. Viewers of my channel, inshallah, we're going to go to a kalam, inshallah. And then inshallah, after the kalam, we'll come back and we'll continue with this discussion. Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
मेहमान मदीने वाले दा 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 कोई کوئی قسمت والا بندا اے مہمان مدینے والے دا ہوندا اے کرم خوش بختاں تے سلطان مدینے والے دا کوئی قسمت والا بندا اے مہمان مدینے والے دا ہوندا اے کرم خوش بختاں تے سلطان مدینے والے دا
بلبل نو سار چمندی ہے وچھڑے نو تاں ملندی ہے بلبل نو سار چمندی ہے وچھڑے نو تاں ملندی ہے دل والے دل وچ رکھ دینے دل والے دل وچ رکھ دینے ارمان مدینے والے دا
کوئی قسمت والا بندا اے مہمان مدینے والے دا ہوندا اے کرم خوش بختاں تے سلطان مدینے والے دا
سرکار دے منن والے دی تاریخ گواہی دیندی ہے سرکار دے منن والے دی تاریخ گواہی دیندی ہے کردا اے حکومت دنیا تے کردا اے حکومت دنیا تے دربان مدینے والے دا
کوئی قسمت والا بندا اے مہمان مدینے والے دا ہوندا اے کرم خوش بختاں تے سلطان مدینے والے دا
سوہنے دے مسافر چلے نے چلے سوہنے دے ولے نے سوہنے دے مسافر چلے نے چلے سوہنے دے ولے نے سوہنے دیا یاداں پلے نے سوہنے دیا یاداں پلے نے سامان مدینے والے دا
کوئی قسمت والا بندا اے مہمان مدینے والے دا ہوندا اے کرم خوش بختاں تے سلطان مدینے والے دا
سینے وچ یاد مدینے دی بلا تے نام محمد دا سینے وچ یاد مدینے دی بلا تے نام محمد دا میرے تے ظہوری ڈاڈا ہے میرے تے ظہوری ڈاڈا ہے احسان مدینے والے دا
کوئی قسمت والا بندا اے مہمان مدینے والے دا ہوندا اے کرم خوش بختاں تے سلطان مدینے والے دا کوئی قسمت والا بندا اے مہمان مدینے والے دا ہوندا اے کرم خوش بختاں تے سلطان مدینے والے دا
صلو علی الحبیب صلی اللہ تعالی علی محمد صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم. Viewers of Madani Channel, I hope and I pray that you enjoyed that as much as we did here in the studio. And these are the sort of things that we need to, play or recite them in front of our children. Our children need to learn them. Our children need to listen to them. We need to explain the meanings of them to them so that they understand them. And the whole purpose of these naats is to instill the love. This is just one of the tools that we have of instilling the love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu ta'ala in our hearts. And we've been talking today about the love and the sacrifices that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu ta'ala has made for us. And we've talked about many examples so far. The one example that always comes to my mind is that he said that for each mention there is an accepted prayer. I mentioned it earlier on, and he said that I keep mine for the day of resurrection as an intercession for my ummah. Can you imagine that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went through so much? And we've only mentioned a few things today. He went through the battles, he was injured, and all these things happened to him. And yet, he still had mercy in his heart. He still had love inside him. He still did dua for us, even though at that time, people were persecuting him, causing so much difficulties for him, but even then, he did dua for all of us. And it makes you ponder and makes you think. I'm going to give you possibly a lengthy hadith now, inshallah, so that you'll understand the status of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is stated that on the day of the resurrection, the people will surge with each other like waves. And then they will come to Adam والسلام, and say, please intercede for us with your Lord. He will say, I am not fit, that but you should go to Ibrahim السلام, as he is the Khalil of Allah Azza wa Jal. They will go to Sayyidina Hazrat Ibrahim السلام, and he will say, I am not fit for that, but better go to Hazrat Musa السلام, as he is the one to whom Allah Azza wa Jal spoke directly. So they will go to Hazrat Musa السلام, and he will say, I am not fit for that, but you better go to Hazrat Isa السلام, as he is the soul created by Allah Azza wa Jal and his word. They will then go to Hazrat Isa السلام, and he will say, I am not fit for that, but you better go to Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala wasallam. And they would come to me and I would say, I am for that. They will ask for my Lord's permission and it will be given. And then he will inspire me to praise him with such praises as they do not know now. So I will praise him with those praises and I will fall down, prostrate for him. And then it will be said, O Muhammad, sallallahu ta'ala wasallam, raise your head and speak, for you will be listened to, and ask, for you will be granted your request. And I intercede, for your intercession will be accepted. And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu ta'ala wasallam will say, O Lord, my ummah, my ummah. And then it will be said, go and take them out of the hellfire, and those who have faith in their hearts, equal to the weight of a barley grain. I will go and do so, and return to praise him with the same praises, and fall down before him. It will be said, O Muhammad, sallallahu ta'ala wasallam, raise your head, for you will be listened to, and ask, for you will be granted, and intercede, for your intercession will be accepted. I will say, O Lord, my ummah, my ummah, my ummah. And this continues, that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will continue on that day. He will do dua for those people that even have a mustard seed of iman inside them. The sacrifice that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is making, the dua that he's making. And then we look at ourselves. And you know, we're in the fold of Islam, we call ourselves Muslims. But are we really, you know, the favors that we are going to receive, the blessings that we have received, the iman that we have received, do we value it? Are we proud of it? You know, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in many other ways, you know, he made sacrifices for himself as well. Sacrifices for the ummah. For example, he said that if I didn't realize it was going to be difficult for my ummah, I would order them clean their teeth with miswak in every salah. But I didn't want to put a burden on my ummah. He could have said, yes, every namaz, every salah, you must use the miswak sharif. But he didn't. Why? I mean, he realized the benefits of it. He realized the blessings of it. But he didn't want to cause difficulty for us. So he said that if I didn't want to put hardship on my ummah, I would have made it, you know, compulsory upon them. But he didn't. And that in itself shows the love that he had for us. The love that he had for us, that he didn't want to burden us. He wanted to make our life easy for us. And you know what, viewers of Madani Channel, Islam is easy. It's not hard. It's not hard to act upon the deen of Islam. It's not hard to pray our namaz 5 times a day. It's not hard to remain in a state of wuzu. No, it's easy. It's our minds that are saying it's hard. It's not hard to fast in the month of Ramadan. It's our minds that are saying it's hard. You know, you can get up at 5:30 in the morning to go on a train and get a job. But you cannot get up at 5:30 in the morning to read your salah. You can stay up till 12 o'clock at night with your friends. But you cannot stay up if the Isha salah is late at night. You can't do it. Why? All of a sudden you've got no energy to read your namaz, but you've got energy to go out with your friends. It's our minds that are telling us it's hard. How long does it take to read the 5 daily prayers? How long to read them 5 daily prayers? How hard is it to adopt the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our lives? You know, adopting the sunnah is even easier. I said, following the commands of Allah Azza wa Jalla is easy. The sunnah is even easier. Why? Because in most of the cases, you don't have to do anything other than what you're normally doing. You cut your nails. Everybody cuts the nails. Cut them according to the sunnah. It's not going to take any longer. It's not going to take any longer whatsoever. But if you do it according to the sunnah, then that in itself is an expression of your love, that I'm doing it because the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it. And you know, we ask too many questions as well. You know, there was an instant, I think it was Sayyidina Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu. Yes, it was. Sayyidina Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu, he was on his camel. And he was traveling, and all of a sudden he lowered his head and he put it back up again. And he was the Amir al-Mu'mineen at the time. He was the Khalifa at the time. And the companion said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, what are you doing? We saw you lower your head, we saw you raise your head, why? And he said, I once saw the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam going by this very spot. And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lowered his head. And that's why I'm doing it. Listen to what was said after that. They said to him, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, at the time of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this tree that you see here, it was quite small. His branches were sticking out. The branches were sticking out, and that is why the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lowered his head, because he didn't want the branches to hit the blessed head of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now this tree has grown up. It's tall. The branches are so high. Yet there is no need for you to lower your head in the same way that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam lowered his head. Listen to the reply. Sayyidina Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu said, I do not know whether the tree is there or not. I do not know whether the tree branches are up there or the branches are down there. All I know is my Prophet did it and I'm doing it. Ask yourself, what's the logic? What is the logic in Sayyidina Hazrat Umar Farooq radiallahu anhu lowering his head? Because there was nothing there to afflict him. In the same way, Sayyidina Hazrat Usman radiallahu anhu, he was sitting at the steps of the masjid and he was eating meat. And when he was asked, Ya Amir al-Mu'minin, your house is just here, why don't you go home and eat? Is there any problems? And he said, no, I once saw the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sitting here and eating meat and I want to fulfill that sunnah. Tell me, where is the logic? Is there any logic? No, there's no logic. I tell you what there is. There's love. There's respect. And that's what we need to adopt in our lives. That love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to understand the sacrifices that he made, the guidance that he gave to him, all the things that he did. You know, we could do whole books have been written on the topic. But we need to make a change in our hearts. We need to be proud of who we are. We need to learn to love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he should be loved. And loving the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not a part-time job. No, it's not a part-time job that you do 12 hours a week, 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day, or when you feel like it. No, loving the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, fulfilling your commands, living your life as a Muslim is a 24-hour a day, 365 day a year, your whole life job. And that's what we need to do. We need to change ourselves. We need to make a change. Viewers of the channel, we've got a small package now, inshallah. We're just going to go to the package, and inshallah, after the package, we'll continue and come towards the end of this program. Let's go to the package. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
There was a certain Sahabi. He used to love Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam too much. Each and every time he looked at him, he used to smile. He used to be very, very happy. Viewers of Madani Channel, this is the true ishq of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One day, the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam met him, and this time he was crying. The Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam then asked him, "Why are you crying today?" He said, "Rasulullah, looking at your caliber and looking at my state, it's of course when we are in the hereafter, in the realm, spiritual realm, in Jannah, you are going to be above me. If I make it and enter into Jannah, I won't be able to see you. I love to see you. Even Jannah, I won't enjoy if I don't see you." Oh, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Viewers of Madani Channel, look at this love. What was the good news the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him? He looked at this Sahabi and gave him this good news. That was the reason, that was the sha'ani nuzul of this verse. That the summary, I'm just giving the summary in our Nurul Irfan, the summary of the verse. I'm just giving the summary that those who obey Allah in this Rasul, Ulaika ma'alladina an'am Allah, they will be from among those people whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them favors. What are they? Mina nabiyyina, from the prophets, wa siddiqina, in the truthful ones, wa shuhada, in the matters. Viewers of Madani Channel, that is the pinnacle of love. Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammadin, salatan wa salaman alayka ya sayyidi ya Rasulallah.
Sallu ala al-Habib, sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. MashaAllah, again, that's showing, you know, the mashallah, beautiful brother giving us some Madani pearls with regard to the Prophet of Allah sallallahu ta'ala wa sallam. Just to give you a few more examples, it is stated that a man kissed a woman unlawfully, and then he went to the Prophet of Allah sallallahu ta'ala wa sallam and informed him. Allah revealed what can be transcribed as, "And keep up the prayer at the two extremities of the daytime and in the early reaches of the night. Surely the fair deeds will put away the odious deeds." That is the reminder to the mindful. And the man said to the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Is this for me?" And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "No, this blessing is for all of the ummah." You know, to read our namaz on the extremities, the Fajr and the Isha, to read the Asr, to Zuhur, the Maghrib, all of these namaz, the benefits are there for all of us. Not just for that people that time or whatever it was, for all of us. And we need to understand this, that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a role model, not just for 1400 years ago, not just for his companions, not just for the people that were around him. And if you look at the books, you look at the books of hadiths, you look at the seerah books, you'll realize that the events that took place 1400 years have been recorded for us. And they passed down from generation to generation to generation. Why? Not so that they are good stories, not so that we can all say to our children and the children say, wow, that's an interesting story. No, they are sent down from generation to generation so that we can benefit from them. The scholars of the deen, why are these scholars there? So that they can get this golden chain, this priceless chain of knowledge can continue. And on that note, viewers of Madani Channel, we need to continue this chain. We need to continue to make scholars of the deen, to carry on passing on this golden chain of knowledge, so that people in future generations can benefit from them. If all of a sudden we stop making scholars and we think, well, it's not my job, is it, to make a scholar? Let somebody else do it. Then what will happen? You know, there was a famous incident once that a king, he said to his subjects that tonight, I want you to all go out with a jug of milk. And there's a big like pool, and I want you to put the jug of milk in the pool. And in the morning, I want to bathe in milk. So the night time came, and one person is sitting at home thinking to himself, okay, I need to go out. You know, people will see me coming out the house. They will check that I've left the house. They'll see me with the jug. But it's dark. It's dark. What are people going to see? So he decided that, look, rather than me putting a jug of milk in there, I'll put a jug of water in there. Because the whole pool will be full of milk. One jug of water, what difference is that going to make? Nobody will know. They'll see me putting the jug of water in. They'll think I'm doing it. They won't be able to see it. So the middle of the night, he goes out. And at the same time, other people are going to the pool. He goes there and empties his jug. Comes back, comes home. In the morning, when the king wakes up and goes and looks, what does he see? He sees a pool of water. Because everybody thinks somebody else is going to do it. We need to do it. We need to protect our iman. We need to create these scholars of the future. We need to find these people that can benefit from this. This is our responsibility. Our responsibility to not only protect our iman, but our responsibility to pass on this golden chain of knowledge. And here in the UK, Dawat Islam is providing these establishments. We have the Jamatul Madinas for the brothers. We have the Jamatul Madinas for the sisters. And I would advise you, you know, you hear it so many times on Madani Channel that Amir al-Sunnah and Nigrani Shura said that in our families, in our household, there should be at least one scholar. And I understand that now, because that one scholar can protect you. That one scholar can help you. But that one scholar can also help the ummah as well. Not every scholar can come into our house, but if we have a scholar in our house, then we can benefit from this. And if that scholar is in our house, then that scholar will tell us the benefits of following the deen. That scholar will tell us the damage we can cause to ourselves by not following the deen. That scholar can tell us how we should follow the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That scholar will tell us how to love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he should be loved. But that's our responsibility. And we should be proud of being a Muslim. And we need to instill that pride inside our children, that they are proud of being from the ummah. And when that pride is inside them, then when shaitanic whispers come to them, when they're invited to commit sin, they'll be able to push it away. It is our responsibility that our children love the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam so much, they are proud of being a Muslim, that when somebody comes to them and says, look, there's a party tonight, there's going to be alcohol there, are you coming? No, I'm a Muslim, I don't do that. But there's going to be women there, there's going to be, no, I'm a Muslim, I don't do that. But there's going to be, I'm a Muslim, I don't do that. Where is that pride going to come? Where is that strength going to come? That pride, that strength will come when we instill that in our children. And one of the ways is to talk to them and let them know about the greatest role model that we have, i.e. the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We need to tell them about his seerah, we need to tell them about his companions, tell about the sacrifices that they made, and make that child proud that I am fortunate to be amongst the ummah of this great person, of the greatest of creation. And when they have that pride inside them, when they realize that this is our true role model, not some film star, not some football player, not some politician, no, the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is our true role model. And when they realize that, when they start to instill the love inside them, when they want to follow in his footsteps, because nowadays what happens is people take other role models. And when they take other role models, they want the haircut like them, they want to wear the clothes like them, they want to do what they do. This is our role model. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is our role model. And when we understand that, when we instill that in our children and they start following the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that love of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will protect their iman and encourage them to follow the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And today, around the world, whatever problems we are facing is because we are not following the sunnah of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're not loving the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he should be loved, and we're not following the commands of Allah azza wa jalla. So we need to make a change. Allah Azza wa Jal give us the greatest role model. What is our role? Sallu ala al-Habib sallallahu ta'ala ala Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Love of the beloved sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Love of the beloved sallallahu alayhi wasallam.